guys, so today's video is going to be the Invisible Man review, and I'm sorry I'm getting so behind on doing reviews. I feel like I need to get better about reviewing them faster. I'm seeing them pretty on time, but then by the time I film the review it's been out for 2 weeks or something, so I'm trying to be better. We will have a review next week for A Quiet Place 2 because I am going to an early screening for that, so I'm gonna try take advantage of the early screening and get my review up before it comes out, or at least by the time it comes out. I mean, anyway, the point is I'm still reviewing them, and I think that's what matters at the end of the day, right? So The Invisible Man, I was excited for this. I don't think I put it on my most anticipated movies though for 2020, and that's because I'm not gonna lie that the trailers made it seem a little bit cheesy, at least for me. I was excited, but I wasn't thrilled because I haven't seen the original Invisible Man. I thought that the trailers showed way too much plot and I couldn't escape the trailers. They were just everywhere, and I was worried that I had already seen the twists in the movie, and you have to kind of trust that production companies aren't going to put the twists in the actual trailer because that would just be dumb, but that does happen all the time, so I thought that's what happened in this situation. So I thought I already knew what the whole movie was about and what the twists were and what the climax looked like and things like that just based on the trailer. But I was wrong. On so many, with everything, I was wrong. But before we get into my actual review for this, I just want to thank Shudder for sponsoring this video. Shudder is a premium streaming service from AMC Networks for all your horror, suspense, thriller needs. You can watch completely ad-free on all your devices, including Xbox One, Fire TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and Google Chromecast, all for only $5.99 a month or $56.99 a year. Shudder has a really unique selection of horror blockbusters, such as some of my favorites, including Ginger Snaps, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Rob Zombie's 31. They have so many classics on there, but also original and exclusive content such as Tigers Are Not Afraid, which was voted by Rotten Tomatoes as the best movie of 2019. So if you want to try Shudder free for 30 days, just go to shudder.com and use my code POSSESSED30. So the story of The Invisible Man is originally part of Universal's original monster universe, I guess you would call it. And this new movie, The Invisible Man, done by Blumhouse and Lee Wannell, definitely gave it a modern treatment. Like I said, I haven't seen the original, but I do know some about the original, and this one is definitely obviously a more modern take because the original's from the 1930s. So this follows a woman named Cecilia, played by Elisabeth Moss, after her boyfriend fakes his own suicide and leaves her with his money. However, she doesn't believe he's actually dead and that he found a way to create a suit to become invisible and is stalking her. Of course, no one believes her, and it follows her desperation to escape his grasp while also trying to convince everyone around her that he is in fact still alive. So I mentioned how my impressions based on the trailer of this movie were completely wrong, and there's multiple reasons for that. First off, there are many things that are in the trailer that actually aren't in the movie, which normally would be irritating because you're expecting something and then it doesn't actually happen. But I think that they did that smartly. Maybe it's just deleted scenes because obviously it was filmed, it was put in the trailer. So when it comes on DVD and streaming and everything, we'll probably get the option for deleted scenes and things like that. And of course, so much happens in this movie that's not actually in the trailer. And I was so sorry about my cat. I was so worried that it showed everything. There he is, ladies and gentlemen, my fat cat. What? You want cuddle? Anyway, like I said, I thought that they showed pretty much the whole plot of the movie within the trailer, but I'm so happy that there's so much, not just the ending is different or not shown in the trailer, but there's plot points within the movie that are so shocking that weren't even hinted at in the trailer. And this movie is just so much more than it appears to be. I don't think you can judge this movie based on the trailer because for me, it looked a little bit cheesy, like your typical kind of action psychological thriller, but there's a lot more horror to this movie than meets the eye in the trailer, and everything about it is just different. It's a different kind of vibe than the trailer. Also, I want to mention that I know Blumhouse can sometimes produce some flops in the movies, like Fantasy Island. It wasn't bad, it wasn't fantastic, and it definitely has a more Lee Wannell feel than Blumhouse feels. So although Blumhouse is the production studio behind Invisible Man, it doesn't have that feel, at least for me. And Lee Wannell is definitely, I don't know if he's underrated because because I think he has a lot of hype behind him. I love him as a director, producer, actor even, and I think he did fantastic with this movie. And I think this is one of my favorite movies that has come out so far this year. The suspense that they created, guys. Oh my god, you felt all of the emotions that Cecilia is feeling in this movie, and the way that they created that through the storytelling was phenomenal. And it like you don't get to take a breath. It's just like you're always stressed out in this movie, which is a good thing. It's not so much anxiety inducing like Mother or Climax or anything like that. It's not that level of anxiety. It's like a good level of like horror anxiety. And I have to say, the jump scares in this movie were probably my favorite jump scares in any horror movie because they were so effective. I saw some of them coming and it still got to me because the tension that was created in the scenes within the jump scares, oh my gosh. And you guys know how I feel about a jump scare. I don't like them generally. I don't think they're necessary in horror, but in this setting and this story, it worked so well. And they're not super overdone or anything like that, so I appreciate that. And the acting in this movie was amazing. Every single character, including side characters, were portrayed so well and acted so well. I think Elisabeth Moss was the perfect casting for this role. The expressions that she can put on her face to make you feel and know what she's thinking, it just blew me away. Now, all of that being said, there are, of course, plot holes and inconsistencies and just implausible events that take place within this movie. Also, I did anticipate a lot of the things that ended up happening towards the end. There were a couple twists and turns, you know, towards the last half or third of the movie, and I kind of saw them coming. Sometimes right before it happened, I would, you know, figure it out, and sometimes it was like well in advance. I'm not necessarily upset at that. Normally, you know, a movie being predictable would be a negative, and it was kind of a negative in this movie, but it got me in so many other ways, and there were so many other things and times that were so unexpected that my jaw was on the floor. I'm talking a lot with my hands. I do that so much. Sorry, that's distracting. Anyway, it surprised me in a lot of other ways that the tooth kind of things that I called towards the end, it didn't make me enjoy it less or anything. And I do believe that this movie is hands down a theater experience movie because you need to immerse yourself in her world with surround sound, big screen, all of it, because you just like go on this ride journey with Cecilia, and oh my, it's just a lot of emotions, I know that there's issues with it, but I definitely recommend seeing it in a theater if you're at all interested in this movie because of the theater experience. If you can look past some of the plot holes and inconsistencies and have some suspension of disbelief in certain moments. Obviously, this kind of plot is not realistic. It's not meant to feel like reality, but it's just the kind of suspense and story that needs to be experienced in a theater, I think. I also want to point out that one of my favorite things about this movie might be a little bit strange to really comment on, not really as a reviewer, but just generally, it was the dialogue and the story, like the way they wrote the dialogue and the conversations. It felt very natural and very much not scripted. So I don't know if some of it was improvised at all, but a lot of the dialogue was amazing in this movie. So now I want to move on to spoilers. We obviously need to talk about some things. I'll talk a little bit about plot holes and things that I didn't like about that and the ending. So if you haven't seen it yet, definitely recommend not watching the rest of this video, but do recommend going to see it in theaters. So the first thing I want to talk about with this movie that might be a good or a bad thing depending on the viewer is that normally with a plot line like this where you're kind of questioning what is real, we normally don't go along that ride with the character, right? We're kind of in the viewpoint of an outsider, and so we're also, as a viewer, questioning whether everything is real or not. But in this movie, we know what's happening to her. We know that the suit is real, that he's alive. We know all of that as we go. So I think some people would prefer the mystery of, well, is it or is it not real? And I really preferred the way that they did it in this movie where we knew all along it was real and that what she was experiencing was real, because we got to experience that with her and feel her frustration and her fear. Like we went through all of the emotions with her, and like you just wanted to scream at the secondary characters in this movie that didn't believe her because you were so frustrated with her of what was happening to her. And although her mental health was, of course, questioned in the movie by outside characters, it wasn't the major plot point or cause of what she was experiencing, which I can appreciate. I felt like if they did the other option of making us question whether or not she's just crazy or if it was actually happening, that's a little overdone at this point, and I'm glad they didn't go that route. I think what you experience watching this movie, especially in theaters, is just a stronger emotional experience, and you're just like hoping, you're like dying for her to get some justice and for them to finally believe her. Like, it's almost like torture watching her go through this and like the people just not believing her. And if we were left questioning whether or not her character was actually experiencing these things or if it was all in her head, I felt like that would have created distance emotionally from the character and from the story, so we wouldn't have felt as much when we watched it. So the twist at the end, there's a couple. One of them being that there's two suits, and we obviously know that that comes back into play at some point, and I kind of predicted that, you know, when she put it in the closet and hid it away, I was like, she's definitely gonna be putting that on at some point. So that kind of led me to predict the end of the movie where she does finally get justice, puts on the suit, and makes her ex-boyfriend kill himself. And because it's captured on security, it looks like a suicide. And she does this because there was another twist earlier where she kills him, and when she reveals the suit, it actually ended up being his brother. And I thought they were gonna end it there. I really did. I was like, they did not. I would have been really disappointed if it ended up being the brother the whole time and that Adrian, her ex, was actually dead. I would have been very frustrated with that kind of ending. But I do think that they made it kind of obvious that it was going to be the brother in the suit towards when, you know, closer to when it happened. I kind of knew it's probably not gonna be him because that just seems too easy. But I also didn't like the fact that it was the brother either. But then there's the other twist that no, it actually was Adrian manipulating his brother in order to get in the suit and like torment her. But majority of the tormenting was done by her ex. I know that's really confusing if you haven't seen the movie. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about, obviously. But as a whole, I kind of liked this plot point and this twist because it did show how manipulative Adrian was, not only to Cecilia, but just in general, and especially to his brother. But the scene where she goes to the house and he like orders dinner and everything, and he is just gaslighting her up a storm at that dinner, and oh my god, like I'm sure everyone was like rolling their eyes. I know I was when he was talking. Like literally I was rolling my eyes when he was talking because I'm like, can you just not? Like, you could tell he was still trying to manipulate her and still thinking he could manipulate her back into a relationship and have their baby. And I'm just so happy she became this like badass, strong woman and stood up for herself and got justice in the end. Now, as for the plot holes, there are a lot, and you can look up a bunch of other reviews online. I don't want to sit here and just point out all the plot holes. Some are small, some are like large. Like, how is Adrian getting around in the suit? Like, he can't just get in a car because he's invisible. I know people probably just look at it and be thinking it's weird and not really look into it, but how is he getting around? How is he always where Cecilia is? I know he's stalking her, obviously, and he knows where she is at all times, but how is he like following her to these places? Do people also just not like bump into him? He was in like a restaurant at one point. How did he walk through a restaurant without like hitting people? I don't know. It's obviously a silly thing. He's in an invisible suit. Like, that's kind of a silly plot, but obviously it's not meant to be super realistic because it's not possible. Also, I think this movie as a whole has a lot of depth to it, and it's obviously about an abusive relationship, but it can also be a metaphor about abusive relationships and getting out of one and how difficult that process is. Also, I want to point out one thing that I really, really appreciated in this movie that was very realistic. She used an Uber. I mean, how many times have we watched movies where they could just call an Uber and they don't, and they try to run? She got in an Uber. Thank you. Now, they don't have her use her smartphone for much else, which is a plot hole in itself because she could have recorded a lot of things, taken photos, whatever, as evidence, and she just didn't. It was a phone and an Uber. That's what the smartphone was used for. So I do think movies need to generally address technology a little bit better in horror movies, especially. I think that they stray away from that or like change the time period so they don't have to deal with all the smart technology, because that'll obviously create easy solutions in situations and reduce the tension, but I'm sure that there's creative ways that they could probably achieve this. So I would say this is definitely in my top 2 or 3 movies I've seen so far this year. We're only in March, but I've gone like 12 or 13 times. So it's definitely in the top 2 or 3 of those. And I highly, highly recommend it. I don't know if you're still watching this and you haven't seen it, why'd you watch the spoilers? But if you haven't seen it and you've been questioning, just go and see it. So if you've seen this movie, make sure you leave your thoughts down below. Also go to Shudder.com and use my code POSSESSED30 for a free 30-day trial from Shudder. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I'll talk to you soon.